Thank you. Senator Blackburn.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and Mr. Duffy. Welcome. We're
Hello, Senator.
delighted to see you here. And a few quick things that I have for you. Number one, Tennessee is an auto manufacturing state. And with EVs, research that's being done on AVs, and what we are finding out is that the Chinese automakers are trying to partner up with Mexico and then bring their automobiles into our marketplace. And of course, that allows them to collect sensitive U.S. data. It allows them to threaten our critical infrastructure. And as we're looking at this AV technology, we want to make certain that the U.S. remains competitive and the leader here. So talk with me for 30 seconds about your thoughts on AVs, the innovation, the safety, and keeping China out of the marketplace.
Yes, I think we need clear rules that are going to allow our innovators to stay in America and develop products that are going to advance the autonomous vehicles that they envision. And without clear rules or a patchwork of rules state by state, I think we put ourselves behind those countries that allow for innovators to expand and grow. And so I would commit to the committee and to the Congress that if I'm confirmed, I want to work on rules that make sure there's clarity for those innovators. Again, if we don't do this, this is
Right.
going to be technology.
And safety on our streets as we look at
Yes.
the AVs. Let me ask you about raising the pilot age. This is something that the chairman and I have worked on. Senator Graham has joined us in this effort. We have a pilot shortage. And by raising the pilot retirement age, we could put some experience back in the cockpit and solve this. Now, the U.S. ambassador to ICAO has refused to participate in the process globally of looking at this. So will you work with me and the chairman as we work to raise the pilot retirement age?
I would welcome the opportunity to work with you.
Thank you. Let's talk Memphis. Not only are we good for blues and jazz and a lot of good barbecue, but we are the logistics hub of America. It is home to all Class 1 railroads. And FedEx, the world's largest express carrier, is headquartered there. And of course, we've got the port there on the Mississippi River. And we know a couple of things about keeping America moving. Now, there's been a lot of talk and many articles written about how people are leaving some of these blue states and coming to places like Tennessee. And this means that we need to look at where those federal highway dollars are spent and placing them in areas with growing needs rather than areas that are losing population. And it also means we need to cut that red tape, as you were talking about with Senator Sullivan. So how can you cut that red tape at DOT and work with us for areas where we have growing transportation needs?
Listen, Senator, I appreciate the question. Obviously, Tennessee is expanding. Florida is expanding. States that have infrastructure that was never set up to have this many people come in. And so I would look forward to working on where we can cut red tape. And this is a space that I have to actually get into the department, should it be confirmed, because I think depending on the program, depending on whether it's rail or roads, the answer is different. But I would like to partner with you and make sure that we bring efficiency to the Department of Transportation so we can have great build-outs in places like Tennessee.
That would be very helpful because many times getting that permission is what slows us down. If you spend 2 minutes with Senator Hagerty or me or Senator Tillis or Senator Budd, who's down here, you're going to hear us talk about Hurricane Helene and I-40 and the way that road has just been demolished right there on the North Carolina-Tennessee border. And we're continuing to try to work through this process to get that rebuilt, but we need to know that this is going to be front and center with you so that we can get that interstate rebuilt and reopened.
Both you and Senator Butt have brought this up to me. I talked to Congresswoman Virginia Foxx as well. If I'm confirmed, the first trip I would like to make is with the both of you to see the devastation, destruction, and the needs to rebuild your states.
Thank you so much. I know you, from your time in the House, you are a strong consensus builder. The Department of Transportation needs that. We look forward to confirming you, and we expect great things.
Thank you, Senator.
Thank you. Mr. Chairman, Ms. Bondi, I know that you are pleased that we are moving to the end of round one. And we appreciate your being here, and I appreciate that you told my California colleagues you were willing to work with them, even in light of the manner in which they have approached you. Now, one thing I think we need to have everybody understand that is watching this hearing today and everyone sitting in here, what we have witnessed over the last 4 years with a weaponized DOJ. My colleagues have talked about this, and the American people know this. They know what was carried out against President Trump and his administration, and in November, they voted to see an end to 2 tiers of justice, 2 tiers of treatment, 2 tiers of access, because they have absolutely had it with the lies, with the accusations, and with the attacks that have come against so many people who were just seeking to live their lives, and then all of a sudden found the FBI or another federal agency or the DOJ knocking at their door. You know, Ms. Bondi, it would make you believe that my colleagues have learned nothing from the elections in November. They don't see this as a movie script that someone may have liked to write. What they see is this is real life. And they want a restoration to equal justice, equal access, equal treatment, abiding by the rule of law. Many of us have talked today about making America safe again. And in Tennessee, I hear a good bit about this. And as we've discussed your nomination, one of the things I've mentioned to people is your career as a prosecutor. And you have touched on that some today. And you are bringing that insight of being a prosecutor to bear. And I do appreciate that. Now, one thing that I think is noteworthy, and in preparation for the hearing, I looked some of these numbers up. During President Trump's first term, violent crime in this country actually fell. Yes. It fell by 17%. And in the first 2 years of the Biden administration, it soared by 43%. This is crime that is taking place in all of our communities. We've seen a rise, whether it's California or Tennessee, we have seen a rise. So I want you to talk to Tennesseans, to Californians, to all Americans about what you're going to do to get this crime rate down in this country.
Senator, thank you for that question. And despite the questions from Senator Schiff, I look forward to working with you and the state of California to do everything we can to fight violent crime in California. And you know as well as I, that crime is only going to go through the roof now after these forest fires. You're going to have looting. You're going to have price gouging. You're going to have so many things that I have dealt with in the state of Florida, and I am committed to working with California just as much as I am committed to working with you, Senator Kennedy, in the tragedy that just took place in Louisiana, given all the human beings that were murdered in your state, and we have the Super Bowl coming up in less than 3 weeks now, I believe, Senator. I've been a little busy, but we've got to ensure, if I'm confirmed, that everyone in this country is safe. And I will work with you. I will work with you, Senator. I will work with all of you in this country. For everything that Senator Blackburn said, we have got to reduce violent crime, and we have got to restore integrity to our law enforcement officers. Donald Trump, we keep saying he won this election by 77.3 million votes and 312 electoral votes. Look at the map of California, Senator Schiff. It's bright red, the popular vote, for a reason. People want law and order. They want to be safe so they can go to take their children to school, so they can go to church, Senator Hawley. People want safe streets. Of course we care about our economy and what's happening in this world, but if we're not safe, none of that works. We have got to come together. We have got to work together to make America safe again, and that in turn will make America great again. And I don't know where that phrase has become a bad word, because I think that's a great one. Making America great again.
Let me move on with you to something else that's about law and order, and that is Section 1507. Because making certain that our justices are protected is important, and we also, with our judges, Section 1507 makes illegal any protest outside of a judge's residence if the intent is to influence the judge's decision-making. And we have heard about the protest outside of justices' homes where they were shouting loud and clear things like, and I'm quoting some of that, "If you take away our choices, we will riot," end quote. Another one, "No privacy for us, no peace for you," end quote. In other words, if the justices did not vote to uphold Roe and Casey, the protesters would continue to harass them. Despite this clear violation of the law, Merrick Garland did not bring a single charge, not one single charge, under Section 1507. Will you commit to faithfully enforcing Section 1507 as Attorney General?
I will faithfully enforce that law and all laws that I am asked to review. And Senator, I watched that on TV and it horrified me, the protesters outside their houses. You can't do that for a reason, because our justices have to remain safe and unbiased and protected from threats, as do we all. But they do enjoy a special protection, and yes, that should be enforced.
And thank you, Ms. Bondi. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Not extend the Tax Cut and Jobs Act. It is that $4 trillion tax hike that people are going to see, and I appreciate your comments about a Main Street small business recovery. That is something that is so vitally important, and as the chairman knows, we have had much discussion over the last few years with the Biden administration over how they determine that $400,000 number. If it is the gross, if it's the adjusted gross, they came up with the term of total positive income, which is everything you make. And we know that the Biden administration approach on this would be a killer for Main Street businesses. We know that 199A is vital to them, and they need to see that in the Trump tax cuts and in that permanent so that we can have that Main Street small business recovery and revival. I appreciate that, and I appreciate that President Trump has nominated you for Treasury Secretary, because you are sensitive to that and what your work means to Main Street and to individuals, and getting the IRS under control and looking at some of these provisions that are going to be in front of you. So we appreciate that you would come back a third time and look at public service, and that John and Caroline and Colin, by the way, they are behaving so beautifully. Whatever they want, they get.
Ice cream.
Senate orders. We'll be right there to support them. I do want to talk with you for a moment about CBDCs and some of the push that the Biden administration had. They did an executive order for Treasury to research development of a CBDC in the United States. And of course, this causes a lot of us heartburn because we look at what the CCP did with the digital yuan in connection with the Olympics. So upon confirmation, how would you approach this discussion of CBDCs? And are you for them or against them? Could you end the Biden administration project to create a U.S.-based CBDC?
Senator Blackburn, thank you for your remarks. I may have a little trouble disciplining the two behind me, as I'm sure that I will hear that a U.S. Senator has vouched for their behavior.
Yes.
But on CBDCs, I see no reason for the U.S. to have a central bank digital currency. In my mind, a central bank digital currency is for countries who have no other investment alternatives. So if we think about a reserve manager, a high surplus country, whether it's Saudi Arabia, Singapore, who ends up with, call the Chinese currency whatever you want, the yuan, the RMB.
Yeah.
If you own that currency, you have to have something to invest in. There's very little to invest in if you want to hold the currency. You could own Chinese government bonds, which don't yield
So
very
your
much.
view of that would be a negative view?
Well, I view that many of these countries are doing it out of necessity, whereas
Yeah.
the U.S., if you hold U.S. dollars, you could hold a variety
Absolutely.
of very secure U.S.
Yeah.
assets.
I appreciate that. I appreciate your comments earlier to Senator Barrasso about the Pillar 2 negotiations. This is something that we would be well served to extract ourselves from this. Currently, the preliminary data that we have, 40%, right at 40% of the total Pillar 2 tax burden is on us. And China, of course, has found a way to exempt themselves from this. So that is in need of a revisit, and I look forward to you doing that and standing with our companies. I want to get, and this I think you can just submit to me in writing, Advanced Persistent Threat, APT, which is China. They were able to override Treasury's security system and remotely access workstations where they reported access to unclassified documents. And of course, this is Chinese Communist Party at work again. And this is, we found this out after finding out from the Treasury Inspector General that 2,800 IRS employees still had TikTok on their government devices. If confirmed and when confirmed, will you take steps to improve Treasury's security systems?
Senator Blackburn, one of the earlier questions was, what policies of the current Treasury Secretary do you disagree with? And as you noted, the December 8th hack into Treasury was via a work-from-home system. Yeah. So I, as Treasury Secretary, have confirmed, plan to be in the office every day that I'm in Washington, D.C., and I expect all the other employees to do that too.
Thank you.
And I think it's a matter of national security for everyone to be at 1500 Pennsylvania Avenue.
Thank you.
Thank
that
you.
is well received. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Senator Welch.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. It's delightful to be a new member of the committee.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And Mr. Collins, always good to see you. Appreciate that. As we served in the House, you were known as being a consensus builder and a problem solver. And I think as we look at the VA and the situation that is there, we need someone who can build consensus among the employees and solve some problems that are existing in the VA. So you made a comment about it was important to get the right people doing the right job, and I agree with that. And as we have been overseeing the VA, something that has been a consistent problem is the return to work policy and the lack of individuals that are working full-time. At one point, out of VA benefits, they were only required, according to Secretary McDonough, they only had to work in person 2 out of 10 days. And then in healthcare, they had to work in person 5 out of the 10 days. So that is a problem, and I fully believe that's why the backlog, as you mentioned, that long-term backlog is at 265,000. If you put those that are under 120 days on that list, you are at 956,000. This is because people don't go to work. So where are you on that and having that return to work policy?
Thank you, Senator. It's good to see you. It's also good to see you back over here as we've worked together many times. And I do pride myself, as I mentioned in my opening statement, about the stuff that we worked on bipartisan, Music Modernization Act, which you are such a great champion of as well. And we're going to have to work together on this. But I do believe people need to come to work. The President's made it very clear. He made that very clear that people need to come to work. Now, there are certain issues and times, and before the question is asked, that we have a large portion of the VA workforce is unionized and they're in contracts, but we're going to work together to get people back to work.
What percentage of those employees are union?
80.
80%?
Approximately 80% of 470-ish thousand.
Okay.
And some of them in the telework agreement stuff. Look, we're going to encourage them to come back to work. We're going to follow the President's directive in that, and we're going to make sure that we get people in there, because at the end of the day, it's about veterans. My hospital employees, if I was confirming this, they have to show up every day.
Okay. That is encouraging, because you look at we've talked about the health records, the EHRs, and the fumbling, the $15 billion that has been spent on that not to have those records. The way there is no transfer, data transfer from DOD to the VA on those health records. This is a problem we can fix. We've got a lot of good health IT experts in Nashville that could fix this. And when they hear from people that are in the VA system about they can't get any care, the wait times, and we've talked some about the backlog. At the Fort Campbell facility, VA facility, the wait to get a primary care appointment today, and we've just checked our numbers, is 81 days. And in Chattanooga, it's 110 days. In Murfreesboro, it is 54 days. That is completely unacceptable. And if people are going to not show up to work, if they're beholden to the union and say that it is about them and not about the vet, that is something that is just completely unacceptable, and it's one of the reasons we need to strengthen community care. The suicide rate, that 34.7 individuals per 100,000 of our vets that choose suicide, the mental health components, and having that community care where they can access it in their community without having to travel, having an EHR that they are carrying with them to the doctor, that will be helpful.
Senator, you've hit a multitude of things there that are all important to the very ending aspect, and that's the health and safety and the wellness of our veterans. The rec healthcare record system, I mean, there's nowhere else we can even point to. I mean, you cannot, if a doctor in the VA walked out and decided to go take a job in the private sector, guess what they're going to find when they get there? Electronic healthcare records.
That's right.
So the system that we currently use, it still is, F1, F2, it's unacceptable, because it creates what the problem that you've seen going forward. Look, I believe in all workforces, and I believe, that the employees at the VA, whether union or not, are very valuable, and I respect that. I was years ago, 5 years in the Food and Commercial Workers Union when I was in a big store, grocery store. I get the issue. But also I believe we ought to bring people back to work, that we ought to make it in a way that people are not only employees, but at the end of the day, we remember it's not about the VA, it's about the vet.
That's exactly right. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Senator Blackburn.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chairman, and thank you so much for being with us today. And I have no doubt that you will be confirmed and you are going to do such a solid job for the people of this country. And I do have several issues I wanted to talk with you about and didn't have time to cover them all when we met prior to the meeting, but rural health care is very important to me and the people of Tennessee. 78 of our 95 counties are rural counties. Now, over the last few years, we've seen hospital closures. So we have focused on access in rural areas. And my rural health agenda, which is bipartisan, focuses on innovation, telehealth, access points. It focuses on work shortages. And also, Senator Warner and I have together focused on making certain that we address the area wage index and do that fairly for our citizens that are in rural communities. So I would like a commitment from you that when confirmed, you and your CMS administrator will work with us to make certain that the area wage index is balanced and that it is fair to rural areas.
Senator, both Dr. Oz and myself recognize that rural health care is in crisis in this country, and that is catastrophic for our entire country. And I talked a little bit about my commitment to rural health earlier in this hearing. The regional price points, as you know, are set by Congress and not by HHS. I will
CMS.
certainly, and I know Dr. Oz will certainly work with you to make them sensible.
We look forward to that. Also, you and I, before you came forward as the secretary, the nominee, we had talked in years past about over-medicating youth and concerns over that. And I was looking at a report from TennCare, which is our Medicaid program in Tennessee. And I was concerned when I saw a number that TennCare had spent $90 million in 2024 alone on ADHD. This was 417,000 of our children. And $90 million. To me, that is heartbreaking, what is happening there. So how will you prioritize oversight of prescribing practices while promoting alternative solutions such as counseling, behavioral therapies, community-based interventions for our youth?
Exactly, and that's the solution. 15% of American youth are now on Adderall or some other ADHD medication. Even higher percentages are on SSRIs and benzos. We are not just over-medicating our children, we're over-medicating our entire population. Half the pharmaceutical drugs on Earth are now sold here. 70% of the profits from pharmaceutical companies are from the United States, even though we only have 4.2% of the world's population. Not only that, but a recent study by Cochrane Collaboration founder Peter Ghosh found that pharmaceutical drugs are the third largest cause of death in our country after heart attacks and cancers. Oh, they're not making us healthier. We need community health initiatives. We need access to treatment. We need exercise. We need better food.
Okay, let me talk to you about one of those access points in treatment. And this highlights a problem we have in the federal Medicaid law. Since Medicaid's enactment, states have been prohibited from using Medicaid funds for care provided by institutions for mental disease. We refer to them as IMDs. These are psychiatric hospitals, residential treatment facilities with more than 16 beds.
This is a discriminatory exclusion, and it denies payment for medically necessary care based on the illness that is being treated, and it has perpetuated unequal coverage in mental health care. So if you're confirmed, when you're confirmed, will you commit to working with me on repealing this discriminatory exclusion and ensuring equal access to mental health care for Medicaid beneficiaries?
Yes, Senator.
Thank you so much. I've got a question on PBM reform, one on artificial intelligence in healthcare. In the interest of time, I will yield back. I look forward to seeing you help make us healthy again.
Thank you, Senator.
Senator Blackburn.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And Mr. Patel, there is absolutely no doubt that you have the experience and the expertise to lead the FBI, and we welcome you here today. We are pleased that you are here. I've been listening to my colleagues across the dais and listening to their questions, and it has led me to one thing. Why are the Democrats so afraid of you?
I don't know, Senator. You'd have to ask them.
Well, I tell you what I think, and listening to their questions and your responses, which we appreciate, they know that you're going to go in and you're going to clean up that political cabal that has been over there for years. You are going to reposition the FBI to its core mission. You stated that earlier in this hearing, and there will be no more political persecutions and no more two tiers of justice, and they have liked having two tiers of justice. They have enjoyed it, and it has helped them. They think in their political mission, they've enjoyed targeting Catholics. They've enjoyed targeting parents. But the American people have said they want no more of that. And our colleagues know you're going to clean it up. I want to talk to you about the Epstein case. I have worked on this for years, trying to get those records of who flew on Epstein's plane and who helped him build this international human trafficking, sex trafficking ring. Now, earlier I urged then Chairman Durbin to subpoena those records, and I ended up being blocked by Senator Durbin and Christopher Wray. They stonewalled on this. And I know that breaking up these trafficking rings is important to President Trump. So will you work with me on this issue so we know who worked with Jeffrey Epstein in building these sex trafficking rings?
Absolutely, Senator. Child sex trafficking has no place in the United States of America, and I will do everything, if confirmed as FBI director, to make sure the American public knows the full weight of what happened in the past and how we are going to countermand missing children and exploited children going forward.
Thank you for that. I do want to touch on the political persecution. I find it so interesting that they feel like you would carry out political persecution. Your parents are with us today. They fled Uganda and persecution from Idi Amin. And I think that with your background and given your family's history, that you would never move to political persecution. Is that accurate?
Yes, Senator, that is.
And we appreciate that you would remove any kind of two tiers of justice from the FBI because they have practiced that every day for years. Not all FBI agents. There are some good ones, and we certainly want to keep them, but the politics has got to be moved out of the agency. Now, they've tried to frame you as being anti-police. We've discussed that some today. And I know that you grew up working with NYPD officers in your community. And I know that law enforcement groups, including the National Association of Police Organizations, have endorsed your nomination. And on top of that, your brother is a law enforcement officer. Is that accurate?
Many of my family are, yes, Senator.
How many of your family, sir?
Well, I guess the Indians have a different definition of family. We got a really big one, and they're all family.
We all love big families.
So we got a lot.
I appreciate that. But it is accurate to say that in your role, you're going to do everything that you possibly can to protect the men and women who are protecting our communities.
That is of the utmost importance.
Thank you. I want to go to the Nunes memo. You were the principal author of the Nunes memo. Is that accurate?
Yes, me and staff.
Thank you. And that did really so much to focus the light on the Russiagate hoax and the political cabal that was for years operated out of the DOJ and the FBI. And I know that there are some that felt like that memo was not accurate. We know now differently. And I'm quoting a comment that was made about that memo and by a member of that House Intel Committee, and I quote, "It was meant only to give Republican House members a distorted view of the FBI," end quote. I find it so interesting. They use the term distorted view. I think the American people who for 4 years under Biden saw the FBI weaponized against them, against parents, against people of faith, weaponized against President Trump. I think they would disagree with that. Do you stand by the good work that you did on the Nunes memo?
Our team, and yes, absolutely.
And the Nunes memo was accurate in its description of the details, correct?
As confirmed by the Inspector General, the Special Counsel, because the Nunes memo only contained sworn information received pursuant to transcribed interviews and production of government materials, including FBI 302s and DOJ memorandum.
So the Nunes memo is accurate.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you for that. In your new role as director, how will you work to root out 2 tiers of justice at the FBI?
The same way I have always done so, ma'am, with the utmost fidelity to the Constitution and integrity to law enforcement. Government must allow those who are privileged to serve to execute their law enforcement duties fully, but at the same time, the American people deserve accountability inwards to government, to any of those who violate that sacred trust.
And as you prepare to take this new role, what are the top areas of concern for you as we look at our national security?
The top areas when it comes to national security, ma'am, have remained unchanged and the threat dynamic has increased. It's thwarting terrorist activities and terrorist attacks here and overseas against our citizens and our allies. And it also includes CCP espionage, which is running rampant these last 5 years through our country, including our cyber infrastructure and our agricultural properties. And it also includes taking on Iran, the #1 state sponsor of terror, and any other adversary that wishes to harm America.
Thank you. I look forward to a yes vote on your confirmation.
Thank you,
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Chairman.
Senator Padilla.
Mr. Chairman.
Oh, yes.
Since the senator from Tennessee.
Each of you, we are, we're really pleased that your families are here, that you have this nomination, and we're so looking forward to having you serve President Trump and the American people in your position. So congratulations to you. Ms. Dillon, I want to come to you first. In Tennessee, we follow the motto, let's make it easier to vote and harder to cheat. And it is important for each person to know that their vote is counted and that that the process is going to be a process that is true, transparent, and honest. And so our counties have been busy cleaning up voter rolls, and it's why Tennessee has been ranked #1 in the country for election integrity. And I know that you're going to follow those same premises at the Department of Justice. So I would like for you to talk about what you can do at the Civil Rights Division to make certain that we restore election integrity.
Well, thank you for that question, Senator Blackburn, and I really appreciate how Tennessee has taken a lead in cleaning up the voter rolls. Federal law provides under the National Voter Registration Act that states do maintain their voter rolls in an up-to-date way, but in fact, most states are woefully behind in doing so, which creates confusion and distress among citizens who are concerned that their votes are not being equally cast. I think there are limited enforcement mechanisms for the Department of Justice to necessarily take the lead on this particular issue, but there have been many cases in which private organizations or state parties have been granted standing to challenge, and the Department of Justice has the opportunity in those cases where the facts have been developed to come in and take a position as well. And the position, in my opinion, of the Department of Justice should be 100% in favor of clean voter rolls. And now many states have evolved excellent methods for doing that in a fair way, giving citizens notice, giving them notice in multiple election cycles. And so I think there are many ways that states can stay up to date like Tennessee has done.
Thank you for that. Mr. Sauer, I want to come to you, and I appreciated the opportunity to visit with you prior to the hearing. I want to drill down on one comment you made, justice without fear or favor. And I appreciated that because so many people that have reached out to us, members of this committee, have noted that it seemed we were in a season under the last administration where there were 2 tiers of justice and 2 tiers of access and 2 tiers of treatment, and the American people have spoken against this loudly, and they want equal justice for all. So I would like for you to comment on what you mean and how that concept, justice without fear or favor, is essential to your role as the Solicitor General.
Thank you very much for the question, Senator. And again, thank you very much for the opportunity to meet and speak with you. I greatly appreciated that opportunity. I greatly appreciate the question as well, because I think that you've asked about something that goes to the heart of the role of the Department of Justice. As I mentioned in my opening statement, the principle of equal justice under law, which is the same as justice without fear or favor, is central to the Department of Justice's mission. Senator Hawley, I think, referred to some recent historical examples of situations where that was not fully upheld in the most recent administration. In my opening statement, I referred to what to me obviously are the most compelling and really astonishing experiences that I have had with respect to that. That really arose, certainly that involved many of the cases that I had the privilege of litigating under the leadership of Senator Schmidt, but in it when he was Attorney General of Missouri, but also representing President Trump in the recent lawfare and weaponized prosecutions that he experienced. So we have a number of unfortunate examples in our recent history in the Department of Justice, and that's why what was really kind of a ringing call to me in President Trump's inaugural address was his statements that I quoted about restoring equal justice under law and the constitutional rule of law.
Thank you. Mr. Ritz, in your role over at DOJ, you're going to be responsible for initiating policy initiatives. And this is something important to addressing violent crime that is just raging across the country. And I want to get from you in writing what you can do. The previous Trump administration had programs like Operation Legend, which was very effective in Memphis, Tennessee. And I know my time has expired, but if you'll submit that one to me in writing.
Thank you, Senator Blackburn. Thank you for respecting that time. We're going to hear from Senator Hirono now.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I asked the following 2 initial questions of all nominees before any of my committees, so I will ask you, starting with Mr. Sauer, and we'll just go right down the line. Since you became a legal adult, have you ever made unwanted requests for sexual favors or committed any verbal or physical harassment or assault of a sexual nature?
No.
No.
No. Thank you for letting me go over my time.
Senator Blackburn.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and congratulations on your nomination. We are glad that you are here. I know you've done some work on tying benefits like the child tax credit to work. And I think if we are going to incentivize people to get into the workforce, we have to remove incentives that are keeping them out of the workforce. And I think we're all concerned about rampant fraud that we have seen in some of these programs, and especially from the pandemic. And of course, DOGE is helping to root that out. And getting the fraud out of benefits should be a first step when we look at making these programs solvent. And I'd like for you to talk a little bit about what you would do to restore integrity in that benefits system and bring forth concepts like tying benefits to work that would help elevate our workforce participation rate.
Thank you, Senator. I agree with you that part of the objectives of the Secretary and the President are to root out the fraud that is in place, and that's why improving the payment systems so that departments and agencies responsible for implementation of programs have more tools to identify potential sources of fraud and reduce them. When it comes to benefits, I agree with you that ensuring that we don't create disincentives to work. It's important that we encourage people during their prime working years to continue to be part of the labor force, and what we don't want to do is create disincentives whereby they decide not to be in the labor force because of benefits. And so work requirements, I think, are a relevant and important component to include in those programs.
And let me ask you about some of these foreign tax schemes that we're seeing that I think are discriminatory in nature and hurtful to U.S. competitiveness. The OECD's Pillar 1, Pillar 2, the GMT, you're looking at U.S. companies paying nearly 40% of the burden when it comes to the Pillar 2 taxes. And you've got companies like China that, because they are state-owned, they're paying nothing. And of course, this hurts us. And also some countries that are putting in place DSTs, and that is something else that hurts us, disadvantaged us. Talk about what you can do to reassert U.S. leadership on the global stage in dealing with these unfair taxes.
Thank you, Senator. Yes. So Pillar 1, looking at digital service taxes at the OECD. Pillar 2, the global minimum tax. The concern we have is that both of them disproportionately targeted American firms, that there are not enough safeguards in those negotiations to recognize the tax structure that we have in the United States. That's why the President issued an executive order calling on Treasury to reevaluate our participation in these OECD negotiations and to make sure that any couple of things. Number one, that United States firms are not disproportionately discriminated against in the way that other countries tax U.S. multinational activities in those countries. And then second, we want to make sure that the sovereignty of the United States is retained here at home. It is not the case that global organizations set tax law. It is the United States Congress that sets tax law. And that's what was so discouraging about the approach the previous administration took to its negotiations with the OECD.
The previous administration also came up with a Corporate Transparency Act, the CTA, which broadly would have disadvantaged Main Street businesses, small business owners, burdened them with paperwork, and caused them to expose information that they ought not to have to expose. So I appreciate that the Trump administration in Treasury has withdrawn that. And I think it's important for Treasury to keep an eye on Main Street and small businesses. In that regard, what would your initiative be?
Right. So thank you, Senator. Secretary Bessent has expressed that it's critically important that Main Street have an opportunity to thrive, and that means finding the right balance between national security and burdens that we're imposing on America's small businesses. The largest businesses out there can afford all of the compliance activities and burdens that are imposed upon them. It's the smaller businesses that have a smaller customer base to spread those costs over that are harmed. And so that's why Treasury is going to reevaluate the rule that was implemented, the rules implementing CTA. We're going to reevaluate those to make sure that the right tailoring takes place.
Sounds good. Thank you, Mr.
Thank you. Senator Blackburn.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and welcome. We are delighted that you are here and look forward to having you move out of this committee, be confirmed on the floor, and get over to CMS and get busy to work. You have quite a job in front of you, and I appreciate the time that you gave when you came to visit with me. As we discussed, changes to healthcare delivery, transparency, electronic health records, all of that is not going to happen here in D.C. It's going to happen in places like Nashville, Tennessee, and individuals that are entrepreneurial in their new starts in their companies that are addressing so many of these delivery and access issues. And as you've heard, there's great frustration with Medicare, Medicaid, the fraud that exists. There's frustration with entities like CMMI that can't do their job, and they need to either get to work or they need to be shuttered and that money used elsewhere. And there is frustration with coding. I would remind my colleagues that it is the American Medical Association that supports many of them that is responsible for coding, and it is time, I agree, to simplify that system, and I know you have thoughts on that, and I look forward to your being able to tackle that issue.
Senator Blackburn, I enjoyed our visit, particularly highlighted the reality that everyone should be aware of, that Nashville has become the healthcare finance capital of the country, with a lot of very innovative souls making major advances in healthcare. We want to empower those kinds of companies to start playing a role with the development of better services for Americans and also cost savings for the American people by building a better mousetrap. To do that, they have to know where we're headed. The first thing you learn in hosting, whether it's a television show or a garden party, is telling your guests where they're going. And I don't think CMS has done that adequately. I'm hoping that if confirmed with strong leadership, we'll be able to message very clearly where we need help and where there are opportunities for us to do better. By engaging the private sector wisely, I think we can challenge some of the incumbents, get some wise insurgent ideas to be seen and tested. CMMI has a history of failed projects, but I think with strong leadership, it will do very well.
Well, let's hope that they do. I do want to talk with you about the low wage index. As I mentioned to you, we've had 16 hospital closures over the last decade in Tennessee. 13 were in rural areas. The first Trump administration put a fix on this, and then the Biden administration let it expire. No guidance, no direction, and it was like our rural hospitals just had the rug pulled out from under them. Can I get a commitment from you that you will indeed address this disparity?
You have my commitment, if confirmed, to address broadly what we have to do with rural health care in America. It's not just hospitals. As we discussed in your office, there's some great institutions, 300-bed hospitals built in 1970 that really shouldn't be a 300-bed hospital anymore, even though it is the only place to get care in that area. We have to provide a better solution for the people in those areas, a financially viable one for the community, and one that actually protects the state coffers. If Medicaid is consuming a third of the budget in Tennessee, which is approximately what it is doing, it's crowding out schools, it's crowding out infrastructure, it's crowding out services that are valuable for folks around the state, and we're eating ourselves from the inside out by not dealing with this wisely.
And you've heard several of us mention Medicaid funding and concerns there with the fraud that exists in Medicare and Medicaid programs. And every time someone defrauds one of these programs, whether it is on providing care or receiving money that is not theirs, it really hampers the ability to get care to people that need it. Another area of fraud that we've noticed is the non-U.S. nationals that are crowding into the program, and individuals that are illegally in the country that are receiving Medicaid benefits that ought to be going to U.S. citizens. Will you work with us on cleaning up these roles and moving them out of the program?
I look forward to ensuring that the determination of Medicaid eligibility is done accurately and honestly. Same for Medicare. I saw an article yesterday highlighting what California has been able to accomplish, taking money from federal coffers to fund exactly the programs you're describing within their state. It's a smart move if you're a state that can pull it off, but it's not the right thing for the American people because we're all in this together.
Thank you. Yield back. Mr. Chairman, thank you to each of you for getting that testimony in and for being here today. We appreciate it and appreciate the opportunity to visit with you. Mr. Isaacman, I was so pleased to hear you talk about nuclear propulsion. We have Oak Ridge National Labs. We have Arnold Air, which is the only place you can do hypersonic testing. And of course, Huntsville and Marshall Space Flight is very close to our Tennessee border. We have a lot of Tennesseans that are there. So pleased to hear you put some emphasis on that. We agree with you that emphasis needs to be placed there. But I want you to just give me a synopsis of what you think is the most important area of competition as we look at what is happening with China, with Russia, with great power competition, what North Korea and Iran are doing.
Senator, thank you very much for the question. For starters, competition can work really well. I think competition from a commercial perspective is doing great. We've gone from a world where at one point in time the nation had a dependency on one launch provider and foreign rocket technology. Now we have a very mature commercial industry with several providers able to help us accelerate mass and people and astronauts into orbit. Well, competition works well on the global stage as well, ma'am, so long as we don't lose. And right now, I mean, that couldn't be more important in the ultimate high ground of space. I mean, that is a critically important domain. NASA will continue to press out, lead the way in that ultimate high ground, but we're going to need our partners in the Department of Defense, the Space Force. We're going to need to be collaborating and making sure they're watching out for us.
Ms. Trustee, welcome, and I'm so pleased to see so many of your family members here to support you, and to all of the, I guess it's nieces and nephews that are here.
That's right, and siblings and friends.
Well, just know she's really smart, and she's working hard. Okay, we talked a little bit about spectrum, and as you know, it concerns me that 60% of our mid-band spectrum is held by federal agencies. Much of that is sitting fallow, is not being used. We cannot afford that. We're commercializing only 5% of that. So talk to me about the importance of NTIA conducting an inventory, the importance of the FCC supporting an inventory, the importance of Congress restoring the ability to have spectrum auction authority.
Thank you, Senator, for this question.
Sure.
So I'll start kind of from the first part about restoring auction authority. As I mentioned previously, I think this is incredibly important to our economic and national security. I think auction authority serves as a catalyst to investment and innovation, not just for broadband deployment across this country, but for emerging technologies and applications that will allow us to be a global leader in technological innovation. As far as supporting an inventory, I think an inventory could be good. It tells us what spectrum is being used and how. As you know, there may be some things that are classified or sapped and they won't be available to the public, but certainly members of the committee could have access to that information to make more informed decisions about spectrum management. But I think we do need to have a full view of what's available, what's being used, so that we can properly put spectrum to its highest and best use for economical.
And maybe even share some of that spectrum.
Potentially, as the studies indicate, yes, ma'am.
Okay. Talk to me a little bit about USF. I know Senator Fisher and Senator Klobuchar asked you about that. And I think USF has outlived its usefulness and needs to be replaced with something different. We'll see what the court has to say about it. So articulate reforms if they say you can keep USF, and replacement if they say you cannot.
Sure, Senator, I appreciate this question. So universal service is the cornerstone of the FCC's mission. It's a part of the Communications Act to advance and preserve universal service generally as a concept.
I just want to know reforms. Yeah.
Yes, Senator. So there could be distribution reforms or contribution reforms, depending on what the facts tell us. I think there's an opportunity to have performance metrics for each of the programs to understand what the efficacy is of each of those programs in addressing the needs. There could be better oversight over eligibility requirements. There could also be better oversight over participating providers' compliance with those programs to ensure that those dollars are being targeted to those who need them.
Excellent. Thank you so much. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm going to send you one question on payola.
Yes, ma'am.
Because that is so important to our artists there in Tennessee. And to each of you, all the children deserve ice cream. They've been awesome today.
Thank you, Senator.
I would ask Senator Blackburn, is the ice cream limited to the children?
Senator Cruz, you showed up on time today, so you, too, deserve ice cream. I will be certain that at lunch I serve you ice cream.
I will take it.
Thank you, Senator Blackburn.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And Mr. Long, we appreciate your being here today. One of the things that has been so frustrating to Tennesseans is when they call the IRS, they can't get answers, they get different answers, and the culture there has been that people don't even show up to work. They're working remote. And you spoke a little bit in your opening statement about culture. If you would talk about ending remote work and putting people back in the office and what you're going to do to make certain there is an explicit answer for our taxpayers.
Thank you for the question. And a lot of people think I'm still in Congress. So I get a lot of messages about issues and problems, and I got a message within the last 5 days. And it was from a gentleman, and he said, I've been on hold with the IRS for 2.5 hours. And he said, it's not about a disputed amount, it's about the first quarter trying to get answers. He said, after 2.5 hours, someone picked up the phone. And I had to get some paperwork, I had to go look up a W-2 or whatever, and after 12 minutes, the person on the phone said, I don't have time to wait for you. This is after he'd waited 2.5 hours. Call times, I mean, you call American Express, you call American Airlines. They say, would you like to be put in a queue? Let us know. We'll call you back in approximately 28 minutes. And I think that the IRS needs to run more like a business. We went over to Bucks County, Pennsylvania. Boyers is over, I'm not sure if it's in Bucks County because we never made it. We were trying to look at the limestone underground where everybody's papers, all the retirement papers are held, but there's a call center there in Bucks County. I believe it's in Bucks County. And we were allowed to sit and listen with a headset to the folks there answering people. Now, these are all former government employees calling about their, one gentleman, his mom had passed away the day before, and him and his sister were trying to figure out what needed to, happen or whatever. And the lady on the phone there that I was sitting by was so nice, so polite. The gentleman was so polite. I had some other people with me, and one of them was listening. 2 calls out of the 3 came in from Missouri. What I have found since in my time in D.C. is that over at Treasury, over at OPM, anywhere that I've been, the attitude of these federal employees is, I think they've taken my UFO class, upbeat, friendly, and open, because they're all speak to you. They don't know me from anybody, but they're friendly. I think we've got very good people working, but they need better systems, better equipment.
They need that guidance and leadership.
Pardon?
They need that guidance and leadership and that change of culture. Let me ask you about this. We've had lots of complaints about the direct file program. And it is something that was put in place without explicit congressional approval. And what I'd like to know is what you would do with that direct file program. There are a lot of us that think this should be shut down because there are plenty of free programs that are out there that people can file their tax. And so many people feel like this is overly intrusive into their personal information to use direct file.
It's probably one of the hottest topics at the IRS, I guess, except who's going to be the next commissioner. But I plan to, well, I've never been in the building. When we start having these meetings, that's one of the first things that I want to look at, because I know that they used it the previous tax season. And I want to say something about this tax season that just concluded, because people said when I got nominated in December, well, aren't you worried about this tax filing? And I said, no. I said, they have things running smoothly over there. And I want to congratulate everyone that was there in pulling off a very successful tax season. And I know they used it last year and this year, and the next tax season's right around the corner. I know that doesn't sound right on May the 20th, but it'll get here before you know it. So one of the first things I want to drill down on and have meetings on, I know there's people on both sides that have different opinions on direct file. I want to get to the bottom of it and see what is best for the hardworking employee partners that I will have at the IRS if I'm confirmed, and the taxpayers. What's best for those two groups, just like everything. And I want to develop a culture at the IRS that's not top down. I don't want it to be Billy Long's culture. Through these meetings, I want the people there to tell me what's going on in their life. I want to hear all about direct file, other
My
programs.
time's expired. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much. Senator Cassidy.
Hey, Mr. Long. How are you?
3 letters I want to submit for the record before I begin my questions. One is from Tennessee Governor Bill Lee, and then a letter from 24 state attorneys general, and also a letter from Tennessee Attorney General Jonathan Skrmetti.
Without objection.
Thank you. And to Chairman Durbin, I'll be happy to talk with him about the Teneo Network. My son and his wife and so many outstanding young individuals really benefit from that. It's been beneficial in their life. So I'll be happy to enlighten you at a future time. I want to also mention, and for all of our nominees, my Democratic colleagues ask nearly every nominee this Congress whether the executive branch must follow court orders. And then they attack the nominees if they don't give a categorical yes or a no, because the question is nuanced and it's academic. Now, yesterday we had a hearing on overreach of district court judges and the universal injunctions. Now, my colleague Senator Kennedy posed essentially.
I deny everything.
You can't deny this one, buddy. And so he posed essentially the same question to the panel, asking whether they would advise a client to defy a court order. Professor Shaw was the witness for the Democrats. And here is how she answered, and I'm going to quote her. I would not rule out ever the possibility that a sufficiently egregious order, there should be some consideration if there's some way I think it's a qualified answer yes. In an extremely narrow band of cases, I think it would be considered yes, end quote. So the Democrats' own witness at yesterday's hearing on the issue of judicial overreach disagrees with them. I suggest when nominees are asked this question that is intended to be a gotcha question, that they just refer back to Professor Shaw's answer. I think it's unfair to attempt to conjure up disputes with a hypothetical, and these nominees are clearly committed to the law and to the rule of law. Ms. Hermendorfer, I am so pleased that you are before us. I want you to just lay out for this body why you are qualified to serve on the Sixth Circuit.
So my substantive experience ranges across complex areas of law. I've litigated as counsel dozens of cases in the federal courts across 9 circuits. I've argued cases in federal district court, circuit courts, been counsel of record in Supreme Court cases, state trial courts, state appellate courts. So I think my litigation experience serves me well, as does my clerkship experience, in which I was working within the judicial branch, getting a firsthand view of the deliberative process and the importance of treating every case and every party with care and respect. I think perhaps the most important qualification of my recent work is that I'm not a stranger to litigating cases that I know are going to be in the public spotlight and on which people have strongly held views in either direction. And when you're in a case like that, it is absolutely imperative that you treat every issue and every party and every opposing counsel with respect, because you have to model civility the most when you're in a hot button type situation. And I've also gotten a bit of a backbone by knowing that what I do will not always be well received by all members of the public. And I've learned how to take criticism and attacks and personal threats and move forward with professionalism and integrity.
I know you're going to apply the law and you're going to protect people's individual rights. So let's talk about how you will approach cases that come before you. And describe your method of statutory and constitutional interpretation.
Sure. So my method reflects that the enacted text or the ratified text reflects the will of the people as of the time of enactment or ratification. And so the Supreme Court has instructed that if the meaning of the text at the time it was enacted or adopted is clear, then that is the meaning that fixes your interpretation and governs the legal issue that might be before the court. Of course, there are situations in which you use other tools of interpretation, statutory structure, history, precedent, and you use all of those tools to get to the answer that binds the parties. And in no instance is your own view about what the policy should be govern or enter into the inquiry.
Thank you. Yield back.
Senator Whitehouse.
Thank you very much.
About our membership. Our membership is on the way.
Mr. Chairman, it might be convenient to the committee if I were to speak for a few minutes with respect to a nominee, Joshua Dunlap, who we will be considering today. He's a nominee to the First Circuit Court of Appeals, which includes Rhode Island. We've had a good record, particularly working with Senator Graham when he was in your chair, sir, of working effectively on First Circuit nominees. In this case, this is a nominee who is only supported by one of Maine's 2 senators. Senator King has not supported this nominee, and that puts us back in the position we've been in for some time, which relates to the Republican side of this committee's decision to blow up the blue slip for circuit court nominees. When that happened, I over and over again, as I think you'll recall, Senator Grassley, expressed my warning that this was going to be bad for the committee and bad for the Senate, and that when the shoe was on the other foot and we applied the same new rule that Republicans had created, there would be anger and frustration on the Republican side. And indeed, we have seen that anger and frustration on the Republican side when the rule that Republicans created, that the blue slip would no longer matter for circuit court appointees, was then applied against those who broke the rule in the first place. So that is one aspect of why I'll be opposing Mr. Dunlap. The other reason to oppose Mr. Dunlap is that this individual is virulently anti-choice, to the point of having supported a wrongful death cause of action for a death of an unborn child, presenting the prospect of actually criminalizing abortion procedures. I won't go on at length, but he has a considerable record that puts him as an ideologically anti-choice individual, which is fine under the First Amendment, but it raises questions about whether he'll be fair as a judge. His views are so virulent that they likely extend towards pushing the Dobbs analysis that undid Roe versus Wade towards opposition to gay marriage. He is as hostile to gay marriage as he is to women's reproductive choice. Indeed, as a law student, an adult, he chose to intern for a group that had filed a brief in support of criminalizing homosexuality. So because of the extremism of his views against women's rights and his views regarding gay marriage, and because of the opposition of Senator King and the once again Republican choice to overrule a blue slip, I will be opposing his nomination.
We'll now turn to the nomination of Joshua Dunlap to serve as First Circuit. Clerk will call the roll.
Mr. Grant. Aye.
Mr. Cornyn.
Aye.
Mr. Lee.
Aye.
Mr. Cruz.
Aye.
Mr. Hawley. Mr. Tillis.
Aye.
Mr. Kennedy. Mrs. Blackburn. Mr. Schmidt. Mrs. Britt. Mrs. Moody. Mr. Durbin.
No.
Mr. Whitehouse.
No.
Ms. Klobuchar.
No by proxy.
Mr. Coons.
No by proxy.
Mr. Blumenthal.
No by proxy.
Ms. Sorono.
No by proxy.
Mr. Booker.
No by proxy.
Mr. Padilla. No. Mr. Welch.
No by proxy.
Mr. Schitt. No. Chairman Grassley.
Aye.
This vote be either 12, the nays are 10.
The nomination will be favorably reported.
Mr. Chairman.
Now we go
Mr.
to,
Chairman.
Is it
Mr. Chairman.
tongue or dumb?
It's Tom, but Senator Padilla wants to speak.
I want to speak as well.
Senator from California.
Thank you. If I may, just brief remarks before the vote on Mr. Tung. I want to strongly register my opposition to Mr. Tung's nomination to the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals, and seeing that he's from California, my home state, I'd urge my colleagues to give this consideration and join me in opposition. Mr. Tung is not here because of his experience. He's here simply because of his extreme ideologies. Mr. Tung believes in an extreme conception of the Constitution that rejects equality and liberty. He wants to turn back the clock to exclude much of the American public from equal justice. A little over a month ago, at the confirmation hearing, I gave Mr. Tung an opportunity to clear the record by recanting his past history of both sexist and anti-labor comments. Instead of doing so, he chose to dodge and deflect, offering no real explanation or evolved thinking that could absolve his behavior and record. Equally troubling as his past remarks is his lack of experience. As I pointed out during his confirmation hearing, Mr. Tung has never served as a sole or lead counsel in a case that's been tried to verdict or to judgment from the bench. Yet the Trump administration now hopes to catapult Mr. Tung to an appellate court position, not even a district court position first. Now, I'd be happy to work with the administration to find someone suitable for such a critically important position. In fact, both Senator Schiff and I have worked to do just that. We have informed the White House that Mr. Tung would be an unacceptable nominee. And we did put forward other candidates, Republican candidates, including some who had been previously nominated by President Trump for district court judgeships. We took this matter and our responsibility seriously, and we worked hard to put forward nominees who were qualified that we hoped the White House would consider. But instead, the White House chose not to respect that genuine outreach and effort at consultation with us on this particular vacancy. And so we've seen it time and again, unfortunately. President Trump's picks have staffed the Department of Justice, the FBI, the U.S. Attorney's offices, and now the federal bench. And I simply cannot support this nomination, urge you to oppose it as well. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Senator Schiff.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just want to briefly join my colleague, Senator Padilla, and express my opposition to the nomination for much the same reasons as my colleague expressed. I would add that in our discussion during the confirmation hearing of his views of the Dobbs decision and the potential impacts on a whole range of other due process issues that are likely to face the courts. I found his views well outside the mainstream and to be very extreme, and it's not something that I could support, and for that reason, among others, I would urge a no vote on this nomination. Neither Senator Padilla nor I willing to return blue slips on this nominee, and I join my colleagues who have expressed concerns about the practice in the committee now of going forward with nominees when both home state senators object to the nomination of a court of appeals judge.
Senator
With that,
Durbin.
Mr. Chairman, I yield back.
Senator. The nomination will be favorably reported. Now we take up David Dunvat.
Mr.
To be
Chairman.
U.S. Attorney for the Western District of Tennessee.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to speak on him for just a moment. And I do want to remind my colleagues on the other side of the dais that they tossed away the advice and consent responsibility, and not once, not twice, but 3 times, the Biden administration overrode Senator Hagerty and I, and you all sat there and never said a word. Senator Tillis had the same situation. On Mr. Donovan's nomination, he is an experienced prosecutor. He knows the job. He has previously served in this position, and he was confirmed unanimously by the Senate in 2017. Under his leadership, violent crime decreased in Memphis 13%, and during his tenure, he increased the number of federal firearms cases filed in the district by 58%. He led the Project Safe Neighborhoods Task Force in Memphis, and we all know the FBI and DOJ have worked with us to address the crime issues in Memphis. I urge a yes vote on his nomination.
Clerk will call the roll.
Aye. Mr. Cornyn. Aye.